Is there really someone worse than me? Shawnee was stunned and asked in disbelief. He fell silent after Hanju recounted Han Bashan's experience. Cultivate well and find your true goal. Don't disappoint me, Hanju said meaningfully. Shawnee couldn't help but look up at him. For some reason, Shawnee felt that his smile was so holy and noble. Compared to this progenitor, he was really too petty. He was so petty that he wasn't worthy of cultivating by his side. Shawnee had already understood the Han family. They had countless descendants and had been passed down for tens of millions of years. There were definitely descendants more outstanding than him in the myriad worlds and descendants who were even more miserable than him. Even so, the progenitor had chosen him, Shawnee. At this moment, indescribable emotions surged in his heart. His unwillingness and hatred dissipated. He said seriously, "Progenitor, I will work hard and not let you down." Hanju smiled. "Do you sense your own strength?" Hanju said, "There's an extremely mysterious mighty figure in the chaos. He might also be the most mysterious existence in the entire chaos and Shurtion. His name is the Dark Forbidden Lord. No one has seen his true body, but many mighty figures were cursed to death by him." He introduced the Dark Forbidden Lord from the perspective of others. Shawnee was surprised. Using curses to attain the Tao and shock the world? There was such an existence? Hanju smiled, causing Shawnee's blood to boil. The progenitor had given him a goal to cultivate, so he was naturally excited. After understanding why the progenitor had taken him in, not only was he not disappointed, but he was even more grateful. To him, the progenitor actually chose him to fight such a powerful existence. How highly regarded was this? Shawnee clenched his fists and said, "I'll definitely use the power of karma to protect the progenitor and everyone." The so-called everyone included the descendants of the Han family and the hidden sect disciples. These days, Hanju brought him to see the others, and they were very passionate and took care of him, making him feel the kinship he had not felt for a long time. He cherished this very much. Hanju rubbed his head, making him feel embarrassed. Although Shawnee was almost 5 million years old, his mind was still stuck at the age of youth. He had been in seclusion all these years and had not gained any experience. "You're my most favored descendant. I believe you." Hanju smiled gently. Shawnee was so excited that his entire body seemed to be burning. Then, Hanju let him continue cultivating. After entering his cultivation state, Shawnee quickly calmed down. Hanju smiled and started to check his emails. "Your son Han Huang was attacked by cultivators from Shurtion X809222321. Your good friend Evil Heavenly Emperor was cursed by a mysterious curse. Your good friend Huang Zuntian was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure from Shurtion and was severely injured. Your disciple Ji Xianshan has entered Shurtion's River of Destiny. Your good friend, the ultimate god of punishment, was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure. Your daughter Han Ling has obtained the faith of more than 100 million living beings. Her cultivation has increased greatly. Up to date DFRM no VELBINCOM. Your good friendly Dao Kong has fused with the Sword Dao River and established the Great Dao World. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your good friend Holy Mother of Order has entered the Purity Great Dao World." It was still so lively. Every email contained abundant information. Hanju could think of a soul-stirring plot. How interesting. He suddenly envied these guys. It was precisely because their cultivation speed was inferior to his that they could experience more life than him. Hanju also wanted to act recklessly, but he had no backing. He had to keep a low profile and not attract too much attention before he grew up. Hanju focused on the ultimate origin world after reading the emails. The ultimate origin world was far from the chaos and Shirtian. Only Great Tao Supremes could step into the blank domain. However, even Great Tao Supremes didn't dare to enter the blank domain. The Tao creators did not attack the ultimate origin world, so it was calm. However, this was only around the ultimate origin world. An unprecedented conflict had appeared in the ultimate origin world. As more and more living beings appeared, the nether race and the chaotic fiend celestials preached. More and more cultivators appeared. Ambition would naturally grow as one became stronger. Some were born evil, some were born bloodthirsty, and some began to plunder. Because of the upper limit of their potential, there were all sorts of situations, and conflicts naturally appeared. Hanju had no other thoughts about this. He was happy to see this. He could hand it over to the nether race and the ultimate origin soul race. Only after chaos could order be established. Battles would ensue sooner or later wherever living beings were. Powerful existences needed to be weak. He wouldn't care as long as the ultimate origin world didn't suffer any calamity. What he wanted to do was guide all living beings in the ultimate origin world. In an extremely bright hall, 2 rows of stone pillars that were so tall that their tops couldn't be seen formed a great Tao that connected the heavens. At the end of the great Tao, a figure sat on a 1,000-foot-tall jade throne. It was Han Ling. Han Ling wore a golden sleeve dress and had a dignified posture. Her long hair scattered on the throne, and she wore the dragon phoenix Emperor crown. She was like an ancient god who had created everything. She meditated quietly, looking dignified and holy. At this moment, 3 figures suddenly appeared in the vast hall below. Han Yao, Han Yi, Han Ba Hen. The 3 of them had terrifying auras and were domineering, like invincible war gods. Facing Han Ling, they knelt down and bowed. Han Yao said, "Your Majesty, the supreme rules have been stripped from Shirtian. The various factions have gone to fight for the supreme rules and want to obtain the great Tao Providence divine authority. I want to represent the Creation Emperor Court in this fight." Han Yi snorted. This battle concerns the Creation Emperor Court's reputation. We still have to send the strongest Emperor General. Which is me. Han Ba Hen chuckled. Although you are strong, you are not as domineering as me. If you want to shock the world, you still have to rely on my strength. Han Ling said, "All of you, go together. You must obtain the supreme rules. You can't give up even if you face my second brother." Han Yi smiled. Ancestor Han Huang? I've long wanted to spar with him. Han Yao and Han Ba Hen also looked expectant. They had never seen Han Huang's true strength, but he was indeed famous. They could be said to be thunderous and naturally wanted to challenge him. Han Ling's voice was indifferent, but it was extremely oppressive. Han Yi and the other 2 nodded and promised not to act recklessly. Han Ling instructed again before Han Yi and the other 2 left. Han Ling took out a mirror as she looked at their departing figures. This mirror was golden and murky. Han Ling's lips moved as she silently chanted. Soon, a shadow crawled out of the mirror. It was her Emperor Soldier. The Emperor Soldier transformed into a beam of light and sped away. Han Ling smiled and closed her eyes. Shirtian, in the extreme abyss. Dense mist filled the air. One could vaguely see the undulating mountains. A huge river of light floated in the air and flowed quietly, bringing light to a radius of billions of kilometers. Tao Sovereign, Zhao Xianyuan, Jiang Yi, and Loudon flew over and stopped in front of the river. Loudon clicked his tongue in wonder. Shirtian is really magical. A supreme rule actually fell. This is something that I don't dare to think about in the chaos. Jiang Yi shook his head. I'm afraid it's a conspiracy. Recently, the chaos has been wreaking havoc in Shutian. The appearance of this supreme rule can attract most chaotic cultivators. We can destroy everyone in one go if we set up an ambush. Jiang Yi smiled as he felt that it made sense. Dao Sovereign stared at the supreme rule, thinking about something. Lao Dan was about to speak when a powerful aura arrived. I, the great heavenly god king, want this supreme rule. A powerful shout sounded. Great heavenly god king, one of the 10 absolute prodigies of the first chaotic assembly. Dao Sovereign frowned. He naturally remembered the great heavenly god king. This fellow made him very unhappy. He didn't expect to encounter him here today. Dressed in a clean white robe, the great heavenly god king stepped on a white dragon. The white dragon was 10,000 miles long. Its 4 claws stepped on the clouds and rode the mist. It was mighty and domineering. The great heavenly god king smiled as his gaze landed on Dao Sovereign. Isn't this the dark horse who suddenly deflated halfway through the chaotic assembly? TSK, are you coveting external forces again? Be careful not to empty your Dao heart and lose yourself. These words were extremely vicious, causing Dao Sovereign's eyes to erupt with killing intent. Without another word, Dao Sovereign attacked the great heavenly god king. Jiang Yi followed closely behind. Zhao Shenyuan did not attack. Instead, he looked at the supreme rule and asked Lao Dan, "Old man, what power do you think this supreme rule represents?" Boom! The 3 great Dao Supremes fought chaotically, shaking the world, causing the evil mist in the world to churn violently. Lao Dan stared at the supreme rule and said, "Its aura is vast, but it's not ferocious at all. Perhaps it's related to karma and Providence." At this moment, powerful auras arrived from all directions of this endless abyss. Zhao Shenyuan and Lao Dan were moved. Damn it, why is it so fast? Zhao Shenyuan cursed in a low voice. He took out a red sword made of dragon blood and prepared to fight. On the other side, Han Yu, Qin Ling, Azure Heaven Mystic, Ji Xianshen, and Zhao Shuangchuan rode a green light and sped through the void. Zhao Shuangchuan stared ahead and said, "The battle has already begun. There are at least 10 great Dao Supremes. The number of great Dao sages is constantly increasing. There are already more than 30. Han Yu sighed. The fight for the supreme rules is really crazy. Ji Xianshen smiled. This scene reminds me of when I was still a mortal. Sage Fang Liang and I also wandered around. We dared to barge in no matter how many enemies there were. All sorts of things from back then appeared in front of him. Then, why is your relationship with Sage? Fang Liang, Qin Ling asked in surprise. Han Yu glared at him. Ji Xianshen smiled. There will always be differences on the path of pursuit. Once some cracks appear, they can't be healed. Even if the two sides want to reconcile, you juniors have to consider carefully, especially when it involves people close to you. Qin Ling, Azure Heaven Mystic, and Zhao Shuangchuan were thoughtful. If you can't obtain it, understand? Ji Xianshen waved his hand and smiled. His gaze landed on Azure Heaven Mystic and Zhao Shuang. Zhao Shuangchuan said proudly, I am the Eternal Peak. I'm naturally invincible. Azure Heaven Mystic snorted. You're really arrogant. If not for the fact that I didn't attend this chaotic assembly, how could you have obtained the Eternal Peak so easily? Zhao Shuangchuan chuckled. Banquet of the Chaos. The various factions were fighting to split it amongst themselves. Uptodate DFRM no VELB INCOM. 5 million years later. Hanju opened his eyes and checked his emails. During this seclusion, he felt many times that a huge battle had erupted. It was not only Tian, but also the chaos. It even involved the ultimate god of punishment. However, the ultimate god of punishment and the disciples did not use the invocation technique to summon him, so he did not care. Your disciple Dao Sovereign was attacked by your good friend Zhao Shuangquan. Your disciple Dao Sovereign was attacked by your good friend Azure Heaven Mystic. Your disciple Jiang Yi was attacked by your descendant Han Yu. Your disciple Dao Sovereign was attacked by your son Han Tua and was severely injured. Your son Han Tua was attacked by your descendant Han Yi. Your son Han Tua was attacked by your descendant Han Yao and was severely injured. Your descendant Han Yao was attacked by your enemy, the nine-headed divine spirit. He was severely injured. Your enemy was attacked by your good friend Huang Zuntian and was severely injured. Good lord, had these guys gone mad? Hanju couldn't help but deduce that chaotic battle. So it was to fight for a supreme rule of Tian. This supreme rule was controlled by a force that Hanju couldn't even deduce. The immeasurable destruction venerable. How despicable. No one from the chaos obtained the supreme rule even after tens of thousands of years of chaotic battle. Instead, they were all injured. The supreme rule shattered into 3,000 fragments and scattered in every corner of Tian under the immeasurable destruction venerable's deliberate control. In the next 2 million years, it became a divine. With Tian, the overall domain was actually expanding. New creations and strange lands were also born in the chaos, and the chaotic spirit chi was also steadily increasing. The chaos would increase by another level, and not watched as their great Tao world was devoured. Although the immeasurable destruction venerable was plotting against the chaos, his methods were too small and could not be shown. He couldn't stop the situation of the anyone? Tell me, who do you want me to curse? Shawnee's voice floated over from the side. His tone was filled with excitement and anticipation. Oh? Will your curse be deduced? Hanju raised his eyebrows. His tone was calm, like a basin of cold water extinguishing Shawnee's excitement. Shawnee hesitated for a moment and said, "Those weaker than me shouldn't be able to deduce me. I can't guarantee that with those with higher cultivation levels than me." Hanju said meaningfully, "No one can deduce the Dark Forbidden Lord. Your target is him. Perhaps his cultivation level is top-notch, so no one can deduce it? Then you have to have a top-notch cultivation level. Before that, you can't curse anyone to prevent trouble." But Shawnee's face immediately turned pale. How long would it take for him to reach the top standard Hanju mentioned? Hanju smiled. "I should test your strength. Are you prepared?" Shawnee asked in surprise, "What do you want to do?" Hanju introduced the simulation trial to him and gave him the authority to use it. As expected, Shawnee quickly became obsessed with the simulation trial. Shawnee was still a little short of the Great Tao realm. His cultivation talent was clearly not as high as the other creation stars. Perhaps this was their strength. Shawnee's cursed origin star was not in existence that could fight head-on. Shawnee couldn't dominate the Freedom Realm in the simulation trial, but he felt that he was invincible in the same realm. Little did he know that Hongling could fight 10,000 people of the same realm. Hanju didn't have high requirements for Shawnee, so he didn't use Hongling to suppress him. Looking at the simulation trial, Hanju stood up and left. After interacting with his Tao companions for a period of time, Hanju came to the 100-peak Immortal River and visited Fairy Xixian. Coincidentally, Chang Yuer was also here. Junior Han. Seeing Hanju appear, Chang Yuer immediately smiled in surprise. She immediately rushed over and hugged him. Uptodate DFRM no VELB INCOM. You really care about Master. I've never seen you visit me before. Chang Yuer giggled. She was not jealous at all because she knew that she had no right to be. If not for Hanju, she would have long turned to dust. How could she have achieved her current freedom cultivation? Fairy Xixian berated her. Don't talk nonsense. Chang Yuer smiled even more proudly. She hugged his arm and refused to let go. Hanju had to remind her tactfully and naturally pulled his arm out. The three of them sat down and started chatting. Hanju asked them about their experiences. During this period of time, Chang Yuer began to chatter nonstop. Hanju and Fairy Xixian smiled at her and found it interesting. Although the cultivation days were boring, the occasional atmosphere was quite satisfying. Even though Hanju had an invincible goal, he enjoyed his current situation. His days would probably be as calm as now when he was invincible. However, he did not pursue invincibility to have an exciting life. It was just to ensure his safety. Chang Yuer spoke for 2 hours without finishing. Hanju smiled. Are you very curious about Shutian? Yes, but I heard that Shutian's battle was extremely tragic. I shouldn't join in the fun. I'm afraid that I'll lose my life if I'm not careful. You can leave your soul fragment behind. You can revive even if you die. Your freedom, after all. What if I encounter the legendary Great Tao Supreme? It will be bad if they use the Tao of Karma to destroy my soul fragment to kill my main body. It's fine. You can summon me if you encounter danger. I'll support you. Really? Chang Yuer asked in surprise. Hanju smiled and nodded. Fairy Xixian frowned. Don't be like this. Hanju is busy cultivating. How can he divert his attention to you? Chang Yuer curled her lips and felt that it made sense. Hanju smiled. With my cultivation, not to mention helping you, even splitting 10,000 wills is as easy as flipping my palm. Chang Yuer thought for a moment and said, forget it. Back to Cultivate. Chang Yuer's eyes lit up. Really? Yes. That's great. Master, do you want to go together? This is a good opportunity to nurture experience. Chang Yuer giggled. Hanju saw through her schemes and knew that she pretended to almost let it slip. However, Hanju didn't expose her. Chang Yuer's intentions were mainly to please him. Chang Yuer might really like him. More than 80 million years had passed and she had never had an affair with other men. Hanju could deduce this. This opportunity was also a chance for them to grow closer to each other. Previously, Xing Hongxian had also reminded him that Fairy Xixian and Chang Yuer were still waiting for him. Why didn't she give him a chance? Not to mention a transcendent cultivation expert like Hanju, there were countless ordinary Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal women. Of course, some men liked multiple women. However, Hanju already had enough women and was clearly not looking for more. Fairy Xixian hesitated at Changyuer's suggestion. Hanju looked at her and smiled. Let's go! Together. I want you to go. We've known each other for so long, but we've never traveled together. Fairy Xixian smiled. All right. Just like that, the two women packed up and followed Hanju to Shitian. As a Tao creator, Hanju would not be rejected no matter where he went. This was a realm that surpassed the great Tao world. However, once he entered Shitian, he would definitely be noticed by the immeasurable Destruction Venerable. He believed that the immeasurable Destruction Venerable could guess his reason after seeing the two women. With their cultivation levels, there was really no need to destroy each other's great Tao world and form a death grudge. If the great Tao world perished, the Tao creator would not die. As long as the great Tao world was destroyed not too late, the Tao creator could directly recover. Just like how the ninth chaos directly revived all living beings in the chaos. It was so domineering. They quickly entered Shitian under Hanju's lead. Changyuer looked around. It doesn't look much different from the chaos. I heard that Junior Han's children are also fighting for a huge opportunity in Shitian. I wonder if I can encounter them on this trip. Hanju smiled. They're indeed still around, but there's no need to encounter them. They're busy fighting for opportunities and don't have the time like us. Fairy Xixian asked, could it be that one of your descendants created the recently famous Creation Emperor Court in the chaos? Yes, Linger created it. Oh, that girl is so powerful? Changyuer was surprised. She had always felt that Han Ling was weak and adorable, unlike Han Qinger, who was as lively as her. Fairy Xixian smiled. I sensed it before. She's very similar to the past you. Thinking of the past, she tried her best to fight for opportunities for Hanju, but whenever she wanted to go out or there was some risk, Hanju would not accept it no matter what. He would appear humble to everyone and even look weak in their eyes. Although Shitian was in chaos, that was only for the environment. Many places were still peaceful and not harmed. Hanju and the other two came to a great world at the edge of Shitian. It was like the Earth in the Milky Way. It lay quietly in the corner of the void, lonely and beautiful. The three of them entered the world. Countless mortal worlds gathered around this world like the heavenly Tao. They were still dominated by humans. To be precise, they were a race with Kane Tao physique. They had different names in different worlds. They first entered a mortal world and began to travel. Hanju chatted and laughed with them as he looked into the depths of Shitian. Another huge battle erupted. He saw some familiar figures. Han Tuo, Yi Tian, Han Huang, Han Yi, Han Yao, Dao Sovereign, Zhao Shenyuan, Han Bahen, Zhao Shuangchuan, Huang Zuntian, Ji Xianshen, and so on. They were all fighting for a supreme rule. How lively! As they fought, everyone began to besiege Han Huang because he was too powerful. Even Han Tuo had to admit that his second brother had already far surpassed him. The three of them arrived at a town and felt the culture there. It was impossible for the three of them to encounter trouble with their cultivation levels. Even if someone dared to find trouble with them, they could resolve it with a thought. After the three of them walked for more than 1,000 worlds, the chaotic battle in the depths of Shitian continued. Since they had nothing to do, Hanju and the other two stopped on a cliff. Hanju waved his hand and created a screen of light, revealing the scene of a chaotic battle. The two women watched curiously. Changyuer saw Han Yao displaying his mystical power and couldn't help but sigh. Time passed so quickly. Junior Han's descendants are already so strong. Fairy Xixian smiled. That's right. Although, there's a huge difference in seniority between us and them. In terms of experience, we're far inferior to them. She looked at Hanju with a gentle gaze. The greatest providence in her life was when she accepted Hanju as her disciple. Chang Yue asked curiously, Junior Han, who do you think will laugh in the end? Huang Er, Tuar, or your other descendants? That Han Yao, Han Yi, and Han Ba Han are very powerful when they join forces. If there's no surprise, it's Huang Er, but wanting to obtain that rule is wishful thinking. Why? He can't obtain it even if he wins? Yes, there's a conspiracy behind this. It involves the existence who created this great world. His cultivation level is extraordinary. He can't be named or discussed, so I won't introduce him to you, Hanju replied. Chang Yue and Fairy Xixian looked at each other. They couldn't imagine it. Could there really be a creation god? Shi Tian has cultivated countless years earlier than me. If we really fight to the death, I'm naturally not his match. Chang Yue frowned. She thought that Hanju was already the strongest, but she didn't expect there to be stronger existences. The divine might heavenly sage is really humble. Your ability has already surpassed mine. A voice entered Hanju's ears. It was the immeasurable destruction venerable. Hanju replied in his mind, fellow Taoist. Don't worry. I'm only here to play. I won't harm Shi Tian. The immeasurable destruction venerable's voice sounded, I hope so. I'm also worried that the juniors will be rash and rude. Hanju replied in his mind, you're thinking too much. I'm also afraid that you'll destroy my great Tao world. The immeasurable destruction venerable snorted and did not say anything else. From the beginning to the end, Chang Yue and Fairy Xixian did not hear their conversation. They were still nervously watching the battle. Even if their cultivation levels were insufficient and they could not see the details of the battle, from the scene, they could barely tell who had the upper hand. Han Huang fought more than 100 great Tao sages alone. He was extremely domineering. His strength was clearly on par with his other opponents. The three of them continued on their way after watching for several hours. There were many wonders in Shi Tian's world. Several days later, they met in the void. In the dark void stood a lake that emitted 7-colored light. That's right, it was a lake. It was tens of billions of kilometers long and wide. The land and a forest formed a circle that surrounded the lake. Hanju could feel that it contained extremely dense spirit qi. Not only that, but there were also the great Tao of time and space hidden inside. In other words, this lake could connect the past and the future, traveling through the past and present. So beautiful! Chang Yue exclaimed in surprise. It was all thanks to her that this trip was not so boring. Hanju felt like he was raising his daughter with Fairy Xixian. Fairy Xixian frowned. There are many powerful auras inside. Let's take a detour. Chang Yue waved her hand and said, Master, what are you thinking? With Junior Han around, what are you afraid of? Could it be that Shi Tian's master is lying inside? Fairy Xixian was still very hesitant. She looked at Hanju. He smiled and said, there's indeed a great. To those at the Freedom Realm, there was no difference between a great Tao sage and a great Tao supreme. That was why she was so. The three of them quickly entered the 7-colored mountain lake. The existences hidden in the lake and forest did not sense them. Chang Yue and Fairy Xixian guessed that It was Hanju's doing. How terrifying. He had numbed the other party without anyone knowing. The two women toured curiously, while Hanju's thoughts drifted. Han Huang began to borrow his ultimate origin power again. He had to control it cautiously, afraid that Han Huang would explode. Even a wisp of ultimate origin power was enough for Han Huang to deal with the danger in front of him. Then again, what was that? A mysterious and strange existence appeared in Han Huang's hand. Hanju found it familiar. Wasn't that the strange deity? The strange deity was released by Hanju a long time ago. At first, this fellow would return and then disappear. Hanju deduced that it was not in danger and didn't care. The strange deity was very similar to the inauspicious evil. All living beings couldn't spy on it, but it could attack living beings. The current strange deity had already condensed a physical body. Hanju had only forgotten to pay attention to it several times. In seclusion recently, he didn't expect it to grow to this extent. Great Tao Supreme. There was something wrong with its body. Although Han Huang's attack could kill it, it quickly recovered. Undying and indestructible, its recovery speed was extremely fast. In the chaotic void, a dense mist formed by dermic powers filled the air. Looking up, there were spatial cracks everywhere, revealing alternate spaces of different depths. Some cracks even revealed the paleness of a blank domain. Han Huang held two ultimate origin soul oblivion in his hand. He wore a blood-red robe and exquisite silver armor. A red belt was wrapped around his waist like a tendon. His long hair fluttered and his gaze was cold as he stared at the figure attacking from afar. The great Tao sages in all directions also stopped. What is that? Zhao Xianyuan frowned and asked. No one answered him. Even the experienced loud and frowned and stared at the white smoke black shadow. The white chi black shadow was the strange deity. The strange deity ate the inauspicious evil as food. It was not a living being, but it had a terrifying ability that surpassed all potential. Han Yi said in a low voice, "Be careful. This thing is a little strange and lifeless. It's definitely not a living being." Han Bahen scratched his head and said, "Could it be a product of the supreme rules? I'm not sure, but with ancestor Han Huang around, we can let both of them be injured. Only then will we have a chance," Han Yao said softly. He looked at Han Huang's insufferably arrogant figure, his eyes filled with unwillingness. Han Yao wasn't the only one. The hidden sect was also deeply stimulated. Anger and red eyes. Han Huang looked down at the strange deity and asked, "What are you?" The strange deity laughed sinisterly. "I'm very close to you, but you've never seen me before." Very close? Han Huang frowned, not understanding what these words meant. He had lived for 80 million years and had encountered too many living beings. How could he remember them clearly? However, this fellow's aura was too strange. It actually made him feel a long-awaited horror. The strange deity chuckled. "I also want this supreme rule. Can you give it to me?" Han Huang snorted. "That depends on your ability." With that, the strange deity suddenly appeared in front of him. The white chi around him transformed into a huge net that covered the sky and drowned Han Huang. Everything happened too fast, so fast that the other great Tao sages could not react. However, no one was worried about Han Huang. Boom! The strange white chi was minced by a powerful force. Han Huang held the ultimate origin soul oblivion in his right hand and pierced through the strange deity. The strange deity suddenly opened a pair of blood-red eyes. The space on both sides of Han Huang squeezed and pulled him into a deep alternate space. After all, Han Huang had been through hundreds of battles. He did not panic at all. He controlled the ultimate origin soul oblivion and tore apart layers of alternate space. He quickly found the strange deity hiding in the dark and killed him. Immediately after, the strange deity appeared behind him. Countless resentful ghosts roared and attacked him. Unconsciously, Han Huang felt powerful karma restricting his body, making it difficult for him to move. He immediately mobilized his mysterious and powerful unknown power to disperse the power of karma. The illusions attacked again, causing him to sink into the cycle of reincarnation. While Han Huang was in the illusion, the strange deity immediately attacked. However, Han Huang instinctively waved the ultimate origin soul oblivion and killed him again. The strange deity condensed his body again and muttered to himself, "This kid is too abnormal. As expected of your son." His words were heard by Han Ju, who was far away in the seven-colored mountain lake. Han Huang's performance was indeed not bad. Even if he was pulled into the endless illusions, he could still rely on his instincts to kill the enemy. Soon, Han Huang escaped the strange deity's mystical power and fought with it. The two of them were temporarily on par. Neither could do anything to the other. On the other side, the other Great Tao sages and Great Tao and Supremes targeted the Supreme Rules again and fought again. Without Han Huang, their chances of success were greater. Han Ju retracted his gaze. Although the strange deity was strong, it was not Han Huang's match. With the ultimate origin power, no one below the Tao creator realm could defeat Han Huang. The ability of the strange deity was probably going to consume something, but others could not see it. Han Ju retracted his gaze and started to many natural treasures, especially at the bottom. It was a fantasy forest formed by natural treasures. Many living beings were living there, like people in the water. Most of them had transformed. Their duty was to protect the natural treasures, and the powerful existences outside the lake protected them. In the end, the natural treasures had to fall into the mouths of powerful existences to help them cultivate. It was good to help each other. After staying for a few hours, the two women each picked a golden lotus. This lotus contained great providence. Obtaining this treasure could increase their providence. Providence was mysterious and profound. Like karma, it was unfathomable. To mortals, it was luck. He didn't know why they wanted it. Han Ju couldn't be bothered to calculate or guess. After the three of them left, Han Ju removed the illusion he used on the living beings in the seven-colored mountain lake. In the next few thousand years, the three of them traveled around and saw the most magical wonders and creations of Shutian. The battle for the supreme rule continued. The three of them returned to the 100-peak Immortal River. Their relationship had warmed up during this period of time. The two women also understood what Han Ju meant and were in a good mood. The two of them were alone for decades. Han Ju found Fairy Xixian, but nothing happened between them. They only discussed the Tao. "When I attain the Great Tao, I'll," Fairy Xixian said softly. Han Ju smiled. "It's fine. It's up to you. Our cultivation levels have long surpassed that of a mortal. Companionship is better than any action." Fairy Xixian smiled. "Soon. I will definitely." Han Ju smiled and nodded. The two of them chatted for a while more. Before Han Ju left, he immediately entered cultivation after returning to the third Tao field. As for Shawnee, he was still obsessed with the simulation trial. TSK, this kid's opponent was at the Sage Realm. He challenged all the primordial chaos sages in the simulation trial in one go and bullied them in different ways. He couldn't hide his smile. This kid probably didn't know that he could spy on the battle in the simulation trial. Hanju didn't interrupt him and let him be happy. Tens of thousands of years later, Shurtion's chaotic battle ended. Han Huang obtained the supreme rule and his name shook Shurtion. This time, he defeated all living beings. Those self-proclaimed top geniuses also admitted defeat and no longer pestered him. Han Huang held the two supreme rules, one of the chaos and one of Shurtion. His aura reached its peak. The entire chaos and Shurtion could sense it. He was extremely ostentatious, afraid that all living beings would not know.